I will argue what happened here, it's a long answer to your question, is this is just another step in what I believe has been a very systematic and very targeted attempt to cut off the banking or fiat on-ramps and off-ramps into and out of crypto. And unfortunately, Silicon Valley Bank kind of got caught in the crossfire.
Hey guys, welcome back to Library of Wealth. Today we have Mark Yusko discussing the targeting of crypto by the government and how we're dangerously close to a global financial crisis. Yusko believes that the recent events surrounding Silicon Valley Bank's relationship with the cryptocurrency industry are part of a larger targeted effort to limit the use of traditional banking systems as a means of accessing and utilizing crypto, much like the now insolvent FTX. Yusko says we're not quite at the 2008 level yet, but we're close. He warns that the massive influx of deposits flooding the banking system during 2020 and 2021 has left many banks in a precarious position. Instead of lending out the money, these banks turn to investments in securities and government bonds, hoping to boost their profits. As interest rates started to climb, the banks were hit with massive losses that far exceeded their safety nets. This means that if a sudden rush of withdrawals were to happen, many banks would be unable to cover their liabilities, leaving them dangerously close to insolvency. It's a chilling thought that highlights the fragility of the banking system, and Yusko believes this is just a preview of what's to come. Let's check out the latest interview with Mark Yusko as he discusses what we can expect in the crypto market and the ongoing banking crisis in 2023. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content we do here. Let's get right into the video.
Everyone keeps asking, is this 2008 all over again? Is this another global financial crisis? And, Ms. Yellen, Paul, assured us that there would not be another banking crisis or financial crisis in her lifetime. So she's still walking around. Some say just barely, but she's still walking around. So this clearly can't be a crisis because she guaranteed there wouldn't be. While it's certainly something, and we can talk about what that something is, I actually don't believe it's a full-fledged crisis the way 2008 was. A couple reasons. One, if you think about how the banking system works, we, the collective we, all take our hard-earned money and we deposit it in a bank, many different banks, and those banks then take that money and it becomes theirs. One of the great myths of the banking system is it's our money. It's actually not. It's their money. It's the bank's money. And you can see it right on their balance sheet. It says their money. Now we, the collective depositors, have an IOU from that banking system. And most of the time, 99-point-something% of the time, it's money good. But when it's not, things start to unravel fast. And, at the end of the game, it was funny. Larry Summers, I guess, was on last week complaining that, clearly Silicon Valley Bank was just a great example of mismatching borrowing short and lending long.
Right.
So, Larry, you're saying they violated the basic premise of being a bank. I mean, that's what banks do. And this guy was the Secretary of the Treasury, for God's sake. They borrowed short and lent long. Now, the difference is, unlike global financial crisis, where JP Morgan, Citigroup, Bank of America, Wells Fargo should have all gone out of business, right? I mean, their liabilities exceeded their assets. The assets were bad assets, bad housing loans, bad business loans, going to be pennies on the dollar in many cases. This is different. These assets are government bonds, which, barring a calamity that would dwarf anything that we're talking about here, meaning like true Mad Max kind of scenario, those are money good assets. Now you have to wait a certain amount of time. And yes, there's a mark-to-market loss, and it could become a real loss if you're forced to sell because of a bank run.
Yusko states that the current economic landscape is not a global financial crisis yet, but rather a localized panic intentionally created by larger banks. He also argues that these banks are consolidating power and wealth at the top, leading to significant income and wealth inequality. And this concentration of power is a hallmark of mature kleptocracies or crony societies.
I think we're not in a global financial crisis. I think we're in a little bit of a localized panic. I will probably argue that this is intentional by the big banks, right? What we saw was $120 billion leave the little banks and go into the top five. Some might argue they needed that for their solvency ratios and all that good stuff. And concentration of power at the top is the hallmark of all mature kleptocracies or cronyism societies. And you see that in the number of banks at the top, the number of airlines at the top, the number of name and industry. It's all consolidated, and that creates this massive wealth and income inequality that we see every day. Yeah, I mean, to that point, that's 10 times the level of uninsured deposits at Silicon Valley Bank.
Exactly.
And everybody's saying, oh, look how poorly managed that was. And look at, stop, okay? FDIC insurance was never, ever intended to be a fully reserved pot of money.
Exactly.
It's kind of like Social Security, right? My mom, to this day, love my mom, but she believes there's a little pot in Washington, D.C. called Judy's money. And I'm like, Mom, there's no pot. There's no money in Social Security. It is a flow-through mechanism.
Yep.
Well, then where happened all that money that I put in? It went to your parents and other people's parents. And who's paying mine? Me and my two brothers. And that's the way it works. And that's okay, except for the little fact that when Social Security was set up in the 1930s, there were 17 workers for every retiree. When I reach retirement age, there'll be 2. I used to joke when I only had 2 kids that, they had to choose between me and my wife, and I would lose. So I had to have another kid, which we did. So we had a third kid. Now I'm still I'm one to one, and that won't work. But ultimately, there is no pot of money. The FDIC has about 4%, somewhere between 3.5% and 4% of total deposits in the system on reserve, right? That's how insurance companies work, because the likelihood of all 100% of the assets in the banking system disappearing is infinitesimally small. I'll argue it's zero, that happening. Now, what about more than 4%? Well, we came close during global financial crisis, and they had to extend some loans. We didn't come close this time. I think Silicon Valley Bank was about 1 or 1.5%. So, but JP Morgan, that's another story, right? That's about 2.5 times what the FDIC has. So if there were a run on JP Morgan, but look, JP Morgan, let's just say they're survivors.
Yusko also highlights the remarkable story of JP Morgan, who famously acquired the Knickerbocker Trust during the tumultuous 1907 crisis and went on to make a fortune by buying up distressed assets during the global financial crisis. Interestingly, JP Morgan's move to safeguard its own assets during the run on Silicon Valley Bank involved transferring their holdings to a safer location. Yusko also sheds light on the role of the FDIC insurance in safeguarding depositors' funds, explaining that it's not a giant piggy bank, but rather a dynamic system designed to ensure a steady flow of funds in the banking system. What do you think about the latest interview with Mark Yusko and his prediction for crypto, the volatile banking industry, and where the market is headed in the next few months? Comment down below. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Library of Wealth. We'll see you in the next video.